Samantha, welcome to the Siobhan Lu Show. I'm so excited to have you on the show and to hear your story.
Woohoo! So happy to be here and share some juiciness.
Yeah, I know. I know. I was thinking before the show, I was like, when did we meet? I think you like slid into my DMs one day.
I don't even know how I found you. Somebody asked me that actually. I'm like, I don't meet a lot of people on Instagram. Like, it's not a
Yeah.
thing. And I found you. I don't know how. I found you on Instagram and I was like, oh my God. And it really resonated. And I had been looking for somebody, I think I told you this, that did breathwork for years actually, because I'd only
Yeah.
like heard about it. And I was like, this is it. So yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's so funny because I was thinking earlier, I was like, how did we even meet and start talking? Because we've like, done the webinar together and you've got your amazing program that I'm going to be a part of. And yeah,
Yay.
yeah,
Yeah.
to think about it. But I'm sure it was over Instagram. So see, this is
Yeah,
the
yeah, it was.
beauty of social media. Some people, diss it, but I secretly love it.
That's some
um,
good stuff.
yeah. So, do you want to start off by telling, because you have like an epic journey and a story to share? It's like, where do we start? Do you want to share a little bit about your story for us? You can go from wherever you like.
Well, like literally, where do we start? How much time do we have?
We have an hour.
Okay. Well, look, let's start in the beginning. Well, actually, there's probably the before the beginning, but let's start with that beginning, which is where I was born.
Mhm.
I was born in Venezuela and I've never lived there. So I've always been like a pilgrim, let's say. And it's funny, the word pilgrim, because I also have a company in Spain that takes people on a pilgrimage route, which is the Camino. And it's just funny how the word pilgrim comes up often. And a lot of people don't see it as like a traveler. Yeah, like it's just like a traveler.
Yeah.
So yeah, when I was 4, we moved to Spain. I did like my first years of school there. And then when I was 6, we moved to Minnesota, this random little town of Winona.
Mhm.
And that's where I had to learn English and started to forget Spanish. And then we moved to Miami, Florida when I was 8. And that's where I did kind of like middle school, high school, and
Mhm.
like forged a lot of my, like first solid friendships and,
Yeah.
the teenage years. And then actually like one of the biggest and most traumatizing and shaping experiences of my life was when I was 15. My parents split up when I was 14. And when I was 15, we moved, like my mom, my brother, and I moved back to Spain.
Mhm.
And it was kind of like this decision of, we were all under my mom's work visa, and then the company was bought over by another company, and this whole thing. And my mom like made us decide, like, look, you guys can stay here with your father. I don't know what he's gonna do with his visa, but you can also come back home with me to Spain. Of course, we were gonna go with her, but we went and yeah, and then like moving to Spain when I was 15, and I had so many insecurities. I mean, we probably all do at age 15.
Yeah, of course.
Like
Of course.
I like didn't wear pants because like I wore like long skirts because my legs were too skinny, and everything about my body. And like I got my period really late as well. I got it at
Right.
age 15.
Okay.
And there was all this pressure for my body to develop.
Mhm.
There was all this pressure for my body to develop. And yeah, like when I did get my period super late, it didn't develop. Like, I mean, it's not that it didn't develop, but I didn't get the voluptuous body parts that the Latin society and my Latin father promised me I would get. Seriously.
Really?
Well,
Okay.
this is like a major life trauma for me. Like,
Yeah, of course. Of course, especially as like a teenager.
totally. And my dad would always say that, like, don't worry, because I was super like skinny and like,
Yeah.
short. I then grew tall, but that's about it. And then my dad was like, don't worry, when you get your period, your mom got your period late too. You're just gonna like, bloom. Like, and yeah. And so basically, I had to deal with the fact that I didn't grow in that way. And when I moved to Europe, actually, the standards of beauty changed a little bit. And yep. And we just, yeah. Okay, sorry. And so I just had to adapt myself, like going to a new country with all of
Mhm.
these insecurities and pressures. I'd just gotten I'd just gotten my period for the first time. I was waiting for my body to take the shape that my father and society promised me.
Yeah.
And then we move into a school, like the school I went to. I went from this huge TV show like high school in the US,
Mm-hmm.
where there was 5,000 people in the high school, to this private Catholic nun school where everybody had known each other since they were like 3.
Yeah. Wow.
And so I get there and like, oh my God, like just everybody knows the new girl in that kind of school. You know, in the US, like nobody knows who's new.
Yeah.
It's like college, you know, it's like everybody's all over the place. I get there, like people are like staring at me in the hallways, like literally like whispering, like the serious movie thing was like whispering, like looking over. And I was just like, oh my God. And we had to wear like uniforms, and I couldn't wear a skirt because I would just die. I could not have people see my legs. So I was like one of the few girls that wore pants, you know? Yeah. And oh my God. Anyway, and yeah, and then I kind of forged the other part of my teenage years. The first year was tough, but then I made like some of my closest friends today. And yeah, and then when I was 18, I graduated from high school, and I did college in 2 years in Budapest and 2 years in Milan. Mm-hmm. Which is one of like the best experiences ever in terms of also like opening my world to Eastern Europe, which I didn't know a lot about. And yeah, and then I moved to London and I worked there, my first job, and I decided I never wanted to work for anybody ever again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's actually a really big life decision that I made, because you know, I think in today's world, like we create this image of success for ourselves, or at least society creates this image of success. Yeah. Right? That it's like, this is what it should look like, and it's linear, and I'm going to keep growing and more and more and more. And I was like suffocating at age 22 in my own ridiculous expectations and demands of myself. It's like I wanted to like have a business and change the world and whatever by like 22, and I'm like, I have to calm down. Yeah. And at that age, and when I was working at that company in London, like I had a chat with my mom, you know, and then she's like, why don't you go do the Camino, which is this walk? And I had built a company with her, so I'd like did the website. I would even talk to clients, but it would all be through her experience. And I was like, yeah, you know what? I should go. And look, I don't know why I'm surprised that this happened. It's kind of like breathwork, right? Like, you know, but then when things happen, you're like, oh my God, right? And like, yeah. And it's like things happen. And this walk has this other like also like magical effect to it. Like it's this famous walk that people have done over thousands of years, and there's like an energy to it. And I walked it, and 2 weeks later I broke up with like my boyfriend after 5 years. I quit my job. Wow. And I moved back to Spain, which I never thought I would do, because it was like the world. Like for me, it was like Shanghai, and I don't know what next.
Yeah. So what did that walk change? Like what was that kind of like point, you know, like that switch? Was it like when the walk was done? Was it during the walk? Was it like a realization? Yeah, it was definitely after. Like during, it was just like walking and nature, you know, and just like, you know, when you're like in a zone, and you don't have the weight of the thoughts that are usually like weighing on you all day. So it was like a bit of actually, this is what I say, it's like a bit of a parentheses in life, you know? Yeah. And I think you just have like a clearer mind. And I think nature just like puts so much into perspective. Oh, massively. Like people, it's like, it's normally on people's like doorstep. Like it's not far for people to get into nature. And I think people don't understand how powerful it is to like just go out there and explore and just be. Like just sit.
100%. That's a lot what I've been talking about that a lot lately, of like embracing the feminine, or like yin energy, and that we can't like do our way into being. Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. We can't like rush our way into like patience and these qualities that are essentially like just feminine, like yin energy of being, doing, where there's so much wisdom, right? Like if you think of like, even, I don't want to like, just to stereotype it a bit, if you think of like these like ancient Asian movies, right? With like these men with so much wisdom, right? Even if you just think about like the Buddha, like these
Yeah.
figures, and you think about the kind of wisdom they embody, so much of it is around being and having patience and listening rather than talking.
Yeah.
Right. And the passive rather than the active. But we've like over glorified and hyped the masculine and like the doing and the results and the leader and the keep growing. And man, like I'm like suffocated.
It's so true.
We need to
it's
take a chill pill.
Yeah, it's like having, and that's when I was like researching into kind of the masculine and feminine energies. I was like, damn, I am like so in my masculine because I was a sports coach. I was surrounded by men, and the energy was like, get up at a certain time and do this and on the hour and every hour. And I'm like, and I felt the same. I was like suffocating, exhausted. There was like, I always had to do. And then when I started doing breath work and relaxing and being and just doing what I felt like in the morning, and and now I kind of have the, with lockdown, it's like I'll get up when my body wakes up and I'll eat what I feel like eating. And it's very different. I'm like so much more calmer. And that's how like my business boomed and, we're moving house and like all the things just come into place because you just kind of you do things from a more flowing, loving way rather than like, get it done, let's go, 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 go. I feel like it's definitely more of a, just a being energy. It's
100%.
so much more nourishing for my body.
100%. And it's funny because when I asked you, I remember the last time we chatted on the show, like, what was the biggest obstacle, right? Even in breath work or for people to kind of like take that. And you said trust. And I think that that's the biggest issue is that like, beauty does happen when we let go and surrender and when we are, but our lack of trust, right? Like that if we let go of control, all those things are going to happen. And we can't let go with an agenda. It's not like, oh, I'm going to let go so that this result happens. No, it's like the opposite of that. It's like, no, you got to let go to like literally let go and trust whatever comes. And it may not be what you want. Yeah. And that is so scary for so many people.
Yeah, I know.
So
I feel
scary.
like until you go through it, until you've been through it and you look back and you're like, oh, I just kind of let go and trusted and look at where I am now. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's funny about this because I relate a lot to your masculine energy. Like I'm very much like you as well. In fact, in the last blog post that I wrote, like I wrote that I've often referred to myself as a machine, like a good thing. Right? Like I'm a machine. Like I just like get things done. Like I just like, you know, I'm effective. I'm productive. And it's like, what is this?
Is this good?
And yeah. And yes, it has its, I mean, it's not that that's a bad thing per se, but a lot of my journey has also been like reconnecting with the feminine, and and just trusting. And for me, that has looked like a few years back, like I started just waking up and like dancing. I just put music and like move however my body wanted to move. I actually did that this morning as well. Like that's been it. And actually when I look back now, and it's funny this thing, because I think a lot of people see me and they see more like this masculine, energy. Yeah. Right. Like this, and especially because of the business, I'm also like very boom. But there's like this very big feminine energy inside of me too, like huge. And I'm very deeply sensitive and empathetic and super emotional. And I feel that because my personality is quite like direct. I'm an Aries, what can I
say? Of course.
It comes off as that. But one of the times that I've probably embodied the feminine the most was actually my move to Australia.
Really?
Because and when I think back on it, I'm like, oh my God, how did I do that? Because after I moved back to Spain, right? I was working with my mom for 5 years and we like grew the company. It was so beautiful. I also like in parallel did my master's degrees. I did the walk 2 more times. I did like, many things happened in that beautiful interim, but it was like a kind of like grounding of myself. Yeah. So that other parts of me could flourish and develop, but in that like stability of that space. And then I started getting the itch again after 5 years. And I was like, okay, I think I have to leave that. And I had to like detach from like my mom and the company. I knew I wanted to do other things, and I started doing other things. And then I found out about this working holiday visa here.
Yes, I did that in America, the working.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and I was 28 at the time, and I'm like, what? It's until 30? Like, is my time to go travel to different countries and be crazy like coming to an end? Like,
I know, who decides that, by the way? Like, why 30? Why do we have to like stop then? Like, hello. I want to travel for a whole lot longer than
I guess
that.
it's I guess it's because maybe I feel it now, like I'm 31, and after 30, you maybe like the whole like exploring all of the options humanly possible starts to kind of like fade away, and perhaps you want to like settle more, like natural
Yeah.
flow.
Yeah.
And people, I guess those countries don't want you to necessarily settle there.
Yeah, it's true. They don't.
Yeah. So, but anyway, and then the visa, there were very few spots for Spain.
Oh.
And it was like very tight race, and it was like anyway, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna apply for this. If I get this, it's meant to be, and I'm going.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I did, and I got it. And then I had to set a date, and I was quitting like my own business. Let's say I was gonna cut off my salary completely, gave myself a little bonus. But I just set an end date to it. And I was thinking, how am I possibly going to go to a country? And by the way, I didn't just go like on a working holiday visa, like for vacation. Like I sold everything I owned, and I left my apartment. It was like, I knew there was no going back.
Yeah.
I didn't know what the plan was, but there was no going back. And I didn't know anybody. I knew like one human being here, which is the person's house I stayed at in Melbourne. And I hadn't even, this is so not me, by the way, because I'm a planner. Like I didn't even look at like apartments and what they cost here.
Yeah.
I just, yeah. And then I got here, and one of my clients from the Camino was here, and she actually asked me if I could house sit her house while she was in Italy. I'm like, yes. So that was like for the first 4 weeks. And when I was here, I started to look stuff up and see what I was going to do. And wow, I never in a million years thought it would like take me down the path that I'm in right now, which I couldn't have designed it better myself, you know?
Really? Oh, that's so good. So you're just going with the flow. My story is so similar, by the way, how I came to Melbourne. Like I met someone in the States when I did my working visa. I worked at like a summer camp. I met her and she was like, hey, what's your plans after this? And I was like, I don't know, like just go home and work. And she's like, why don't you come to Melbourne? I'm like, okay. And I literally went home, got a ticket, flew to Melbourne, stayed at her house, exactly the same thing. Didn't know anyone, didn't have a job, didn't know about Melbourne, just arrived. She picked me up from the airport and went to her house. And then when I was staying with her, I started looking for a job, and it took me 4 weeks. And then I got a job and moved out. It was so similar.
No way.
Yeah.
That is so funny.
And that was
when was that?
12 years ago, I think now. Yeah.
12 years ago?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you've been here for 12 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think 11 or 12 years. I'm coming up to that date for sure. Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing.
How funny. So similar.
Yeah,
Wow.
totally.
And then,
Yeah, similar. You're a similar age to me, right? Are you?
Yeah, 32.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, well, I guess
I had to think about that. I'm like, how old am I?
I was thinking the other day, it's a weird age. Like I was 31, and 31 it's such a weird number for me right now. I was 31. I don't know. It's like odd. It's prime number anyway. But, weird things, numerology. But like the difference, I guess, is like the age, because in your early 20s, right? It's like, like let life take me wherever it wants to take me.
Yeah.
But like at least me, when I was approaching 30, and I had some like financial goals for myself when I was 25 by the time I was 30. And I just took like, and I was like earning well with my own business. That was like, it was a good, we were doing well, let's say. And I didn't know how I could possibly at least make the same amount that I was making in a country where I knew nobody. And I'm also like, it's not like I have like, like I'm an engineer, right? Or like have this profile of that I could get like a high paying job. I didn't even want to work for anybody. So it was very, I really, and by the way, this is funny because at first my friend also moved a few weeks before. And I had to do a trip to India to meet like my partner halfway because he was still in Spain. When I arrived here, it was like such a irresponsible decision, but that's love for you.
Yeah.
And when I got back, my friend had like found a job like in a cafe and at a shop, and I had so much FOMO. I was like, oh my God. And we were sharing a room, and then I had to move out. So like my expenses doubled.
Mhm.
And when you're just like not making money and you're spending money, and I'm like, oh my God,
Of course.
just have like that anxiety. And I went to like Melbourne Central and I handed out CVs. Like I'd never worked at retail, like, and I had to like stop and like recalibrate. I'm like, okay, hold on a second. Let's calm down. I've not done all of this work, all of this building of my self-trust to do this. Like I didn't come to Australia for a great life experience or to learn English, or like that was not my intention in coming here. My intention in coming here was radically aligning to my purpose and what I wanted to do. So I was like, okay, you have to trust, you have to calm down, stop this like frantic autopilot and stop making decisions based on fear. Okay, which do not lead anywhere good. And you know that.
Yeah, of course.
So I stopped and I gave myself like one more month without worrying like about income. And I still like went out and drank only water, like I wasn't spending anything, but I was not worried about like how I was going to get money and not trying to go to like the easiest option of like a hospitality job or something, And I reconnected and I made a plan and I started just like going to 3 events per week. I started handing out cards. Everyone that I met, I'd ask for a coffee or to like, have a chat. And then slowly, like when you put the intention and the actions in and they're aligned, like, that's when the universe starts to provide. Yeah. And people started like just pointing me to other people. And then this, woman invited me to this one event, and she didn't even know that I was Spanish, and it was called like Spanish Entrepreneurs in Melbourne.
Really?
And then I met all these people there. Wow. Yeah, it was so crazy. And then things started to unfold, and I landed in exactly what I wanted. And I had this thought once in Spain. I remember just like having this clarity of like, education is what I want to do. But I thought like, how do I get there? Like, I know so many people in so many sectors. Like I know nobody in the sector of education. Like I was like, how does this world even work? And I wanted to get into higher education,
Okay.
And then I don't know how, I landed exactly in that space. And I've been, like writing courses and teaching entrepreneurs and emotional intelligence and leadership. And it's like my dream. It's one of the things I know I was born to do.
Yeah, how amazing. That's so amazing. And when did that lead into the Self Club? Like when did that all come about?
Yeah, actually this is a hilarious story.
Go.
This is really funny. So between my move from Spain to Australia, I took a 2.5 month break, like a 3-month break. As you remember my story, I was raised like mostly in Miami and Madrid. So I went back to Miami for like a few weeks, and I went to Aruba. It's an island in the Caribbean where like we go often, and we have a house there. So I went to Aruba for a few months, and there I was like in this kind of self-discovery, right? And I was like, aligning and this and that. And I did this course on, Myers-Briggs, like the 16 personality types.
Yes.
So I did a course on my type that a friend had recommended to me. And it was my type is INFJ. And I was doing the course. And let me tell you, the course was terrible. Like I was so worried. And I later found out like the woman who's doing this course, she has like a very famous blog. She has Asperger's, So she is so ridiculously direct and brutal, even with the advice she gives. And actually, I don't think I've ever talked about this in public, but so listen to this. She actually gave online like coaching sessions during the course live. And it would be, and I'll tell you, like, so one of the advice she gave to one of the girls who was an INFJ, literally, it was this girl making like 500 grand a year in Chicago. And literally her advice in a 10-minute coaching session was, you got to go back to your hometown and find yourself a husband like now. Listen, like I know. And so anyway, and I was like, what? Anyway, so I'm there. And then at some point there was a coaching session and the guy didn't show up. Like it was programmed. And he's like, okay, first one to call in And I was like, this would be interesting. And I was in Aruba. So like, I didn't think I was going to make it, but I open up Skype, I dial in and it's me. And she's like talking to me and it's me. And I'm like, oh my God, how funny. So she's like asking me, what are you doing? And I tell her what I just told you guys, right? Like, well, like I'm leaving my company in Spain. I have no idea what I'm going to do. I have these dreams to change the world, right? Like this is my story at the time. And she literally, I swear, I'm not exaggerating. Okay. She said to me, you are delusional. You have no skills, no talent, and nobody wants to work with you. And people are tired of listening to you. So we're going to end this call. This was after like 10 minutes of me kind of sharing things.
What?
She said those exact words to me. And I was like, between laughing and traumatized, I was like, what is this? This is like a joke, right? Like,
what
are you
age were
kidding
you
me?
when she did this? Were you like,
what? This was when, before I moved to Australia. This was two and a half years ago, almost 3 years ago.
Wow.
So I was just like, and then I just laughed at it at the moment. Yeah. But then as like, when the call finished and the lesson finished, I was getting increasingly angry. Yeah. Not at her for telling me that, because that wasn't going to impact me, but at like the role that she was taking on and the way she was giving people advice and people who were like very lost as well,
Yeah, I'm like, probably
I'm a coach
to like every word she said, being like, this woman's incredible. Like,
And as I'm a coach, right? I'm a life coach and a business coach. So I know how much people hold on to like these figures of authority, whether it's a coach or an astrologist or somebody on TV. When people are lost, like they really hold on to those messages for direction. Yeah. So I was traumatized, and I actually wrote her like this huge email, like explaining to her how messed up everything she's doing is. And at the end, I literally said, fuck you. But
P.S. fuck you.
Yeah, literally. Like that was literally it.
I love it.
Yeah. and then the next day, like just thinking about that, and I finished the email and I was like, oh my God. And I was like, you know what? It's so simple, but the self, like I could dedicate the rest of my entire life exploring and educating people on and studying the self. And it was going to be the self. And then after I'm like, wait, you know what? But the self is so lonely. And I'm like, what if it's like a club of the self? Right? And I'm like, the self club. And
I love it.
Yeah. And then that's when I started cooking like the logo and the website and the concepts around it. Yeah. So that's how that started.
Wow. And with the self club, is there like, do you have separate things? Because obviously the self is made up of so much. Do you have like separate things you look at? And, is it just for women or women and men? Do you want to like dive into what it's kind of all about?
Yeah, totally. So, it's like the self is such a huge thing, and I think one of the places that one of my biggest passions is like self-discovery. Yeah. And this is kind of what I was saying before, like rather than living a life, right, based on these like ridiculous expectations, whether it's like our parents or the movies we saw or our grandparents or whatever, right? It's like that basic self-discovery. Like, why didn't anybody ask us what we love, what our values are, what makes us really happy and fills our soul up? So that's a lot of the basic work, right? It's like that reconnecting with you. And that's like, hey, what are your strengths? What are your skills? And this is developing not only your internal self-awareness, but also external. So it's how do other people perceive you? And are you aware of how you are perceived? Right. Yeah. So that's the external self-awareness. So that's a lot of the big chunk of it is that self-awareness piece. And it's for, it's not for men or women, it's for both. But now, after like doing so many workshops and like trainings and stuff, I've now like focused on the feminine. And we touched on like this feminine energy, but also just like women's self-confidence, because I never wanted to, like, maybe because of this masculine energy that I have as well, right? Where I kind of feel like I want to compete with men. I don't know, right? Like I don't want to go down just like the feminine groups and isolate. No. And so, but I did all this reading. I've been doing so much research on like female self-confidence, and it's just not balanced, like the amount of like women's self-worth, their perception anyway, not their self-worth, their perception of their self-worth is so much lower on average than men's.
Yeah, I
You know,
know.
and
We talk about this a lot, me and Tom, because obviously Tom is into counseling and works primarily with men. And in breath work, it's probably the most common thing that comes up in breath work is their self-worth, like their realizations about their own self-worth and their self-love, how they put themselves out to others and what kind of reflects back to them because of their core beliefs in their own self-worth. um, and it's something that I'm looking more into because if I'm like, well, if I'm attracting all these people that that's what's coming up in the breath, and if that's the most common thing in breath work, that's something that, I need to explore more in terms of delivering these sessions primarily for like self-worth, what's coming up for people. And it's good. There's people like you that are working with that and women's confidence. And it's definitely something that's clearly, either like a missing link or something that's not being delivered for people to either work on or to look at or to realize. Yeah, I think it's so important. I just can't believe how much it comes up in breathwork. It's crazy.
yeah, and I think it's like a disease of our generation, I have to
Mm,
say, and generations below. And it has a lot to do. I mean, of course, there's a lot of like, collective and ancestral energy
yeah,
that we
yeah.
are inheriting. But that, for me, like, yeah, that's a big chunk of it. But that combined with the fact, like, millennials are the first generation, right, to have been raised with the internet in their
Yeah.
childhood,
Yeah.
and the amount of not only information but points of comparison we have to ourselves is not normal. Like, it's
Hmm.
never been this much, and it's not healthy.
No.
It's like it's not, before, you want to imagine, you want to start a brand, right? You didn't have access to like the 25 or 1,000 other businesses that were doing that on Instagram. You maybe knew
Hmm.
like the guy down the road, right? And then you
Yeah.
just started and you got going, and you don't know if there was another guy across the country doing exactly the same thing and
Mm,
bashing yourself for it,
yeah.
right? And obviously, that's just one thing, like with ideas we might have, right, where we get the imposter syndrome and we're like, oh, everybody else is already, so many other people are already doing that, why would anybody listen to me?
Hmm.
And so that's one aspect going on. And then we have another aspect that I think is really important as well, that is now more critical than ever, and is understanding, like, this is where the education piece comes in, understanding the building blocks of self-esteem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like, yes, of course, as adults, we want to educate children, right, in a way that builds their self-esteem. But the point of transitioning from childhood to adulthood is to get the adults to be mature and take full responsibility for themselves.
Hmm.
And we're not doing that very effectively.
Yeah.
And so understanding, taking responsibility for yourself, which is basic of all the work I do, is understanding how you work.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, I need these elements for my self-esteem, and I need to have my needs met, and that's my responsibility, right, to see who
Hmm.
can meet them and how. And I need to set boundaries, right? So like these elements that feed that, so that you can then put that in place,
Yeah.
and take action to feed that. So yeah, and then of course there's all this, collective stuff that we've inherited, and we do often feel things and even have anger and frustration for things that aren't exactly ours because of what's
Yeah.
happening with the collective, because of generational things, patterns, thoughts that have been passed on that we haven't been aware of yet.
Hmm.
So yeah, there's all these things happening, and I think it's so important because, like, think about the life one leads from a place of low self-worth and low self-belief.
I know. I
The
know.
decisions you make, the
Yeah.
overthinking that happens, the risks you don't take, how small you play.
Yeah.
It's such a disservice to yourself and
Yeah.
to like the life that created you.
Yeah, it's so true. And it was the same, like someone said to me, it was actually, maybe it was like last week. It's like, oh, do you ever think of yourself who you were before breath work and after breath work? And I'm like, damn, like that person was so different. And it's definitely, breath work for self-worth was something that completely changed it. Like you said, like I went bigger. I set huge boundaries, which completely changed my life, with
Mhm.
people really close to me as well, which I never thought in a million years I would do. It's like, like, but this is your friend and this is your friend from school, or that's family, it's blood. And it's like, no, bullshit. Boundaries are so important no matter how close or far people are in your life. If it's like a core group of people or people that you connect with once in a blue moon. But yeah, like the breath work brought up boundaries and just saying no and doing what I truly wanted to do and not giving a fuck what anyone else thought about what I wanted to do. And as soon as I like stepped into that, I'm like, oh my God, my life is fucking amazing. It's so incredible because it's like just a couple of things I did, like set the boundaries, did what I wanted to do, and being like authentically me, and just changing my career and changing just little things I did in myself. And I did a post about it as well recently about things I got told that I shouldn't do, like from like lectures in college, from people saying like don't get dogs and don't move to this place and like stay close to the city, and just like little things that I would have
That
taken on
test.
board. Yeah, yeah, that absolutely test that I took on board. But breath work was like, like, don't listen. This is you, like on your path. And the more I did the stuff that I wanted to do without hurting anyone in the
Mm.
process, like my life just went in, for me personally, it's just amazing. It's incredible because I'm doing what I feel worthy of doing for myself, and it's not hurting anyone, it's not doing anything to anyone else, but it is not listening to other people. And if that hurts their feelings, that's their shit. Like it's not mine. It's just yeah, it really is coming down to doing what you want to doing and being proud of it and doing it with passion and with like you're always coming from a place of love when you do what you truly want to do. And I think that's the most important thing as well with self-worth. It's like, where are you coming from when you're delivering it or when you're executing what you want to do?
Yeah, 100%. Well,
Mm.
babe, I guess it's no coincidence that you're one of the only facilitators. Besides, there's like three of us on the 12-week program. So I
Yeah.
feel that now with what you're telling me, that's super aligned. That's also like coming up for you a lot in terms of,
Mm.
what comes up in the breath work, the journey that you've been on, because a lot of those topics, for example, are the topics that we cover in the 12-week program. And it's
Wow.
really like, it's this, it's not, like you said, it's simple. We just have
Yes.
not been taught,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
we haven't been, and sometimes it's very difficult sometimes to go against the current. Like, we're social beings. So if we don't have like even one other person on that journey being like, hey, keep going, it's almost impossible,
It's
because
so
you
true.
feel you're crazy, and you have to have a really internal sense of self when
Mhm.
you feel that you're isolating from the people that are like the biggest part of your life. So that
Yeah,
that
it's so
that
true.
that's why as well here, like one of the things, and this is one of the things I notice, like when I do one-on-one coaching, I mean, yes, it's great, it's powerful, changes lives, but it would be so much more powerful, and you do this, if it was a community around it, and
Yeah.
we could go on this journey and like evolve together and
Yes.
talk to each other about the obstacles that are coming up and why setting this boundary might be so hard, or why these emotions are getting out of hand. And I think that's a very important part of the journey as well, because it makes
Yeah.
you feel like you're not crazy. Well, like, yeah.
Yeah, it's so true. And that's what when I did my breathwork course and I went there, and I always say the story, there was like 40 of us and everyone's sharing their story, and it was okay to share, and they were talking about how they didn't get on with their family or people in their life and what happened. And everyone was just like holding space, like just being like, okay, I'm listening, tell me. And I'm like, what? Why don't we have this in Melbourne? And why are people not talking about this stuff? Like I felt it was like I went in this completely like different person as to when I came out of it. It was crazy. And then when I came back, I was like, I am going to create that in Melbourne. I'm going to create a community. I'm going to listen to people and I'm going to like help them with this stuff that comes up for them. And it's okay. It's okay to talk about it. It's okay to like say how you're feeling. It's okay to be angry and to be sad and to cry. All of that is okay. And we're never taught it. It's like you give them permission, in breath work. I'm like, have a tantrum. They're like, what? Is that, and they kind of wait for me to say, I'm like, don't wait for me. Like, just go. If you're listen to your body, if your body wants to go crazy, like go crazy, just get it all out. It's so much fun. Yeah, but people wait for the permission or to be told or to be taught. And I think it's something amazing that you're doing.
Yeah, and you know what? This is funny, like what you just said as well. This waiting to be told is kind of like how we grew up, and I think right now, I think, to be really honest, I hadn't like thought about it exactly with this lens, but I think what I do, and this is what you do and what you're saying, is giving people back like their self sovereignty.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we have been living as like slaves to these belief systems, expectations around our identity, again, success, like that. We've like lost ourselves, and we blame others for what we do, and we stay in these like victim positions.
Oh, I can't. Me and Tom talk about the victim card all the time. It's like probably our biggest pet peeve. And we're even watching like Offspring. Have you heard of Offspring, the TV show on TV? We started like binge watching it on Netflix, and there's like just all these like victim cards. And me and Tom are like, well, why can't they just say this and just say how they're feeling and just come from a place of love? And we're like, it's a TV show. What the hell are we doing? We're just wasting time yelling at it.
Well, it's a TV show, but it's reality. Like we live in such a victim consciousness world,
Yeah. And that's just something I'm like, and I definitely would have done it before breathwork, but now I'm like, so probably take on too much responsibility. I'm like, no, this is my shit. How can I fix it? But yeah, the victim card. Oh yeah.
And that's all part of the self-sovereignty of like knowing that you are your own being and you can live this life in the way that you want it, and that you choose the actions and that you're responsible for the consequences. And yeah, I hope that in this lifetime I could put my grain of sand in contributing to a world where people are a bit more like that. And I think, another thing about the Self Club as well is I just love that the self is where it all begins.
Yeah.
Because I hate that some quotes, by the way, have become so cliche, because they just shouldn't be cliche. They should just be like fundamental truths. Yeah. Like Gandhi's "Be the change you wish to see in the world." Yes. It's so not like, it's so legit and true and necessary that we have to stop waiting and expecting and blaming others to change when we are not changing or doing the work or seeing what has to be seen, and shifting that back. And if we all did that, because at the end, and what I always say is, the world is a reflection of the collective of the individual human beings put together.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like we all make the collective. So if we all start changing, imagine the impact that has on the collective. And it starts with you. That's the only thing we have control over.
It's
so yeah, that's hopefully what can happen in the next decades that I hope life gives me.
I love it. I love it. And, you've touched on breathwork as well, and you've done a couple of sessions. Do you want to share a little bit about, just what happened with you during your session? Because I love hearing and sharing other people's breathwork stories.
Yeah, I would love that. Yeah. So as I said, like I had been really looking for this because a friend had told me that it changed his life, and he kept wanting to tell me, go to this, but he was in Budapest, and I was like, I never coincided. So I found you, and that was amazing. And so I'm a very mental person. Like I have a lot of energy up in my head, which, by the way, is the masculine, in case you haven't pieced that together. And so when I first did it, I had a lot of like resistance in like, I just wanted to stop. I'm tired, right? Of like reading, like, but I never like expected my body to like physiologically react in the way that it did, like just by breathing,
Yeah.
And that was very powerful for me. It was very just, I don't know, like unexpected and strange and beautiful. And then I just went through these stages in like that, like relatively short period of time. I don't know, like 40 minutes, 45 minutes, right? And it was like stages. And then I had such amazing, just like letting go and clarity afterwards. to the point where I think I told you had to like take a pen and like write things down at some ideas. And one of them was like, we need to work together.
Yay! Thank you, breathwork.
Yes, because I was like, this is the missing piece, right? Like, and one of the things about like what I do as well is like, I don't like holding on to any one thing. I like to bring so many elements together. And I think the body piece, the breath piece, like the reconnecting to the body is so necessary, but our mind is such a big obstacle to it that the breath work, I feel like it's that gateway to like through your action, because you're actually doing like through action to get to like the mind surrendering.
Yes. Yeah. Because you're focusing on your breath, which kind of, I always say, just kind of shuts off that monkey mind of like, what's for dinner? What am I doing later? I can't be bothered doing this anymore. You just have to drop into your body because the mind's busy going like inhale, exhale. It's following the breath until you get to that flow state and you're just like, you're just in your body. You're so in your body.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. It's really magical. Like it's really epic. And again, it's so much more powerful for me at least. And I've meditated, like it's really hard for me to meditate, but this is like active. Like
it's perfect for people that are like, I can't meditate. And it's like, cool, come do breath work.
Yeah.
You are perfect for it.
Yeah. I need me a breath work soon, by the way.
Come breathe. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, it is. It's good. And it's definitely good, like you said, I'm jumping into your program, for self-worth. It's just coming up so much for it. So yeah,
I'm so happy that you're doing this. First of all, like thank you for all the humans that you've enlightened with breathwork and have allowed them to access parts of themselves, right, that they might not have been able to access otherwise.
Oh, I love it. I'm so obsessed. But like I say, it's all them doing the work. It's them doing the breathing. It's them being like open and surrendering,
Yes, but you're guiding them, and I do that too. Deflecting the compliment.
Yeah, I'm receiving it.
Yeah, it's really amazing. Like the community you've created and the work, it's just beautiful. And I'm so excited and thrilled that you could be part of the program as well. Like I'm genuinely excited and looking forward to it. So yeah,
I love it. I'm excited. And when does this program start? So for people like listening, being like, I need to do this program, how can they go about it?
Yeah, so I'm like soft launching and I've sent it to a few people, but it'll officially be on the website like in like a week or two. And on social media, like I'll start posting stuff in a few weeks as well. Like also education pieces on like the feminine and the self-confidence, like to really understand why. And I really want this to be seen not as like one of these like 12-week self-development programs, like 12 weeks of the new you. No, like it's yes. I mean, it's a transformational program, but it's a lot also about like educating yourself about yourself and building a different mindset and framework in how you relate to yourself so that you can teach others around you and that you can have that foundation like for the rest of your life, So yeah, and the program starts, like the actual starting date of the first cohort is going to be the 18th of January.
Cool. Write it down, people. 18th of January. And
in 12 weeks from now.
Yeah. Oh my God, how funny. And this podcast I think will be out in like another 2 or 3 weeks. So you have time. Okay. So what's the website and where can people find you?
Yeah.
So everything.
Everything. So everything is the self.club. The website is theself.club. The Instagram is theself.club. But if you just search the self club anywhere, like Eventbrite, Meetup, LinkedIn, you'll find us there.
Wow.
So yeah.
Oh, I love it, Samantha. And is there anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
I'd just like to say that during these times of what's happening in the world, that trusting yourself is going to be the most fundamental and important thing.
Yeah. Love
Listening to that inner voice. Yeah.
I love it.
Thanks so much for having me on, Siobhan.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom. And I'm so excited to be a part of your program and to see all these wonderful humans changing their lives. And so guys, make sure you follow along with Samantha's work. It's incredible. And if you have any questions for her or myself, please reach out. And thank you so much for listening. And thank you for coming on, Samantha.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thanks. Bye-bye.